Ultra.
Goes huge for Ultra, and they get their first home series victory.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of CA Ultra. Very excited to be back into the regular season. Finally get to talk about the stuff that we enjoy talking about, being the Toronto Ultra and the CDL. You know what I mean? It's a long off season, but I am super excited to be back. I'm one of your hosts, Spencer, with me and Chris. Chris, how's it going?
Pretty great, dude. We got off to a good start with the Toronto Ultra, getting a dubs over a pretty, I like it. Getting a dubs over a pretty good or highly ranked Florida team.
Very highly ranked Florida team.
So I'm super happy to bring you guys some, analysis of that, as well as just some other general content that I thought we may want to add and that we're going to keep on adding from here on. But before that, you know what? If you guys like this, please do us a favor and hit that like button as hard as you can.
We'd absolutely appreciate it.
We appreciate everything. Helps us with the algorithm gods. Pay our dues and respects.
And yeah, jump in the comment section below and let us know what you think about some of the topics today. We're going to try with a little bit of a different format. So A, are you excited about the Ultra's performance over the weekend? But also B, let us know what you think about some of the other content that we have going on here today, which, I mean, let's just jump right into. The first of which being the most impressive and disappointing teams over the first week of the CDL. Now, this is not, we're not like overreacting to 1 week. 1 week is 1 week and we understand that. But I thought it'd be a sort of a fun little content experiment to see which teams impressed you the most and which teams disappointed you the most. So Chris, I'll go to you. Which teams let's start off with disappointed. Which teams disappointed you the most from week one? Let's get spicy right off the bat.
Getting spicy right off the bat. Well, I think I'm going to go with Paris.
Yeah.
And not because I actually rated them. Once again, this is just off the week's data, but I rate them quite lowly. But I think a lot of people rate them a little bit higher, and they, I guess, underperformed as what would be one of the worst team in the league, LA Gladiators, and then they got absolutely slapped on top of that. And for me, it wasn't just that Paris underperformed. Is that I feel like the people who were supposed to perform that team, Weskin and Fire.
Scraps and Fire. Yeah. The wrong twin.
Scraps and Fire didn't perform as well as I wanted it to. And I think like Fire, for example, he only really started doing well after he switched out his gun to, I think, the was the XM12 or something?
The XM4, yeah. The AR.
XM4. And that was just a little too late in the two series. Yeah.
And Paris is another team that, personally, again, I had them as high as a 9, and I thought that the LAG was a very winnable game, and hey, this could very well be a case of LAG punching up as opposed to Paris punching down. You know what I mean? Maybe LAG is just better than we thought. It was a 3-2, so it's not like they came out and got 3-0'd. They were down 2-0, so I mean, it could have been, but they were sort of able to bring it back. But I agree. I thought that in that group, that's a tough group to be in, and I thought that LAG was a very winnable game for Paris, and if they want to sort of come out of the gates hot and show people what they're capable of, it would have been a good game to win. I think it's something to get more difficult from here, and you're right. I think I was really excited to see Fire, and again, it's 1 week. It's for the content. That's what we're saying. Who disappointed us from 1 week? This team can definitely turn around. I think Fire, again, had moments where he looked great. And again, the more consistent, the more that this team plays together, and as the season progresses, I can see certain players improving. But from the 1 week, I agree that I had them beating LAG 3-2, and that was the team that I was disappointed with. And then the other one, the elephant in the room, and I'll be the first one to say it, was the Dallas Empire. And again, before everyone freaks out, no, Dallas isn't going from number 2 or number 1 in my power rankings, down to number 5. Everybody has off weeks, and Dallas just chose to have one of their off weeks to be, the first week. I still think that, come the stage playoffs, this is going to be the team or one of the teams to watch out for. They're defending champ for the reason. But I'll be honest, when Minnesota went out there and the CDL showdown, they played Ultra. They played them close. It was 3-2. It was a really close game. And they go out there and they get beat by the LA Thieves. Not pretty handily. Those hard points are pretty one-sided from LA Thieves. So when I had watched the LA Thieves game, I thought there was no way that Minnesota was going to beat Dallas. I thought Dallas was going to walk in there and have it 3-1. Minnesota probably would take the S&D. They seem like to be one of, if not the best S&D team in the game right now. I mean, Atlanta Faye's right up there with them. But for them to come out there and not only play the hard points pretty close to Dallas, but also beat them on the control and S&D, really surprising. I would actually say that was the biggest upset of the weekend. So we're talking about most disappointing teams. I kind of got to go with the team that, in my opinion, was a part of the biggest upset of the entire weekend. So again, I think if you're a Dallas fan, you're not hitting the panic button by any means, by any way, shape or form. But it was surprising to me and disappointing. But I expect them to bounce back, and I'm sure they'll be fine.
Yeah, but what about your I guess the team you're most impressed about, Spencer?
We're in the Jersey, baby. The team that I was supposed to. Now again, I'll put Ultra and FaZe, and I think you're gonna deal with the other one. But Ultra and FaZe, I think, really, really impressed me because the Atlanta FaZe, for them to obviously play as competitively, really, really tight hard points versus a team like Optic. But really, for me, it was their S&D that stood out. They absolutely dominated Optic in terms of S&D, and there was question marks going into the season about Optic's S&D, but I actually thought the way their roster was constructed, they would be a pretty good S&D team. But man, Atlanta FaZe just looked so clinical out there, and it's such a scary team because you know their control is going to be elite, you know their hard point is going to be elite, and if their S&D can also be top tier. I mean, there's a reason why I put them first, but they still really impressed me. I picked 3-2, they won 3-2, so I wasn't too surprised, but they impressed me. The other team is going to be the Toronto Ultra because this was a team that, I actually had them beating Florida 3-2, but even I felt like maybe some of my bias was showing in that prediction, right? Florida was the number 4 ranked team. If you go to CDL Intel's, they polled the coaches, they polled the players, they put sort of a list together, and Florida was number 4. Florida just beat FaZe in the CDL showdown. I think a lot of people had Florida winning that game, and I did pick Ultra. But even I was surprised, not only did they beat them, but they looked good while doing it. It wasn't like a really scrappy 3-2. They beat them 3-1, and that could have been a 3-0. So, I mean, we'll talk more about the specifics, but they really impressed me. How about you?
For me, it was in between the Roker and LA Thieves. Initially Roker because they had that big upset, but then honestly looking a little bit deeper into it really, really shows that they're great at, those slow, more methodical based modes, like your controls and your search and destroy. But like their hard point really needs work. They haven't won a hard point yet in the Classic, Kickoff Classic, or this week.
Yeah.
And they were losing against LA Thieves 60 to 250.
Yeah.
120 to 250. It was almost embarrassing from that standpoint. So I really can't say Roker just because of how unbalanced their skill set is right now. For me, we had LA Thieves beat 2 very middle of the game, middle table teams, middle to high table teams.
Yeah, I was gonna say Minnesota's not middle table. Minnesota's like a top. I think I might put them top 5 right now in that 5th sort of slot. Minnesota, they look good, and I agree that their hard point has been underperforming, especially the other modes. Right? I think they're 0. Yeah, they haven't won yet. They're 0-6. Right? Like they lost both to Toronto, both to LA, and both to oh my god, the Dallas Empire. But it's hard to say Minnesota because they did lose, I think, handily to the LA Thieves. I think that's just a testament to how good LA Thieves have looked, especially out of the gate. They're probably up there as well for most
Minnesota. And also, I know nobody's rating New York subliners too highly, but once again, they had to beat out Mac and Clayster there. Those are 2 great guys.
Well, that whole they looked good too. Asim looked really good. That was a really close game versus LA Thieves. I wouldn't sleep on New York either. I think they still have some really good potential as the season progresses. I think they can definitely grow.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, LA Thieves took it. But let's get into the meat and potatoes of this video, which is the Toronto Ultra. First off, Spencer, give me your high level. What are your thoughts on Toronto Ultra's performance?
I think I don't want to say answered questions because, again, it goes with our previous segment of most it's disappointing and impressive. It's 1 week, right? We know it's 1 week. It's just fun to just buy in a little bit too much into 1 week, but anything can happen, right? It's so early in the season, you never know. But a big question mark, I think, coming in, where how are Cammy and Kleenex going to perform after, I think, what was an incredible end of the season, right? Objectively speaking, personally, I was sold on Cammy and Kleenex, but objectively speaking, there was question marks regarding these 2 players. I mean, Kleenex looked great when he was in, but let's be serious here. He only played, I think, 3 events at the end before champs, right? 4 events is not a large enough sample size. Cammy was inconsistent at the beginning of Modern Warfare, and looked really good near the end. But again, I wanted to see if he could do it the entire year long, and they came out of the gate hot. I mean, those 2 looked fantastic. Kleenex especially, I was high on the kid, but he blew me away with some of the plays that he was making, especially in that control, almost that break near the end for that 4th sort of, control for them, almost single-handedly clutched them that round to make it 2-2 before, unfortunately, they do bow out 3-2 in that one. But man, and hard point, he was running all over the map. I think breakingpoint.gg, if you guys don't follow them for your Call of Duty statistics, you absolutely should. But they did a top tier sort of, players your hard point KDs. Sorry, and I don't want to go too much into KD, but Kleenex was number 2 with the 1.35 on respawn. So or hard point. So incredibly professional performances from those two especially. So that's what really stood out to me.
Yeah, I agree. From a high level, from my standpoint, the one thing I said after Kickoff Classic that I really want Ultra to improve upon is being able to have their players be fairly consistent while at least having one or two guys pop off. We don't want to see the difference between having players carry versus not carry is for me when they're carrying, one person is playing so well that they're making up for the underperformance of the rest of the team. And non-carrying is when a team one or two guys is performing really well, but the rest are doing their job. And that's what we saw this weekend. We saw Kleenex for the most part, but also Camley, really playing well. And then we saw, Bance Morley, but Bance, he was just doing his job. He wasn't being a star, but he was doing his job. Methods, especially in S&D in Miami, he was doing his job.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because I think
he was doing his job.
Sorry, I don't know this because I think that again, it's not going a little bit more specifics. I think there was moments in the Miami where I would like to see Methods again, like react to those rotations a little bit quicker, and maybe sometimes I think he was a little bit too far back. But I think you're right. Like there's very clearly set plays in which Methods had to do what he had to do. And like to get it a miss, right? With that one point where they put him on that head glitch, and then I think Bance rotated over the bomb, and Methods had to watch his cross, and he gets a 2-piece. Like it was good teamwork, good team coordination, and I really liked what your point about Bance was because when you'd watch the CDL Kickoff Classic, everybody was talking about Bance, right? The guy dropped a 1.72. Everybody was like Bance this, Bance that, and I was like, hey, Bance is not going to average 1.72. Like let's chill for a second. And even if you watch the first hard point, obviously he didn't put those kinds of numbers, but I actually think he played better Call of Duty if that makes sense. Like. During the Kickoff Classic, if you watch him in the minimap, he very much was like just running around looking for kills. Like I felt like he was playing a very, very slay-heavy role, and him and Camry were sort of alternating between the ARs and the SMGs. And almost like we had 2 flexes on the maps, whereas Bance didn't play as slay-heavy, but during the actual game, made some big plays where like he would either get a pick and then go and get intel and play his life long enough for players to rotate over and like get the trade. Like I thought he actually made some really heads-up play, and even though the kill-death ratio doesn't necessarily show it, personally, he actually impressed me. So I think the 2 shining stars were Cammy and Kleenex, but you're right. Methods in the respawn. I think the control hurt Bance. I think Bance actually played pretty poorly during the control, going -13 in the control mode, especially how close he were was difficult for us. But for those hard points in the S&Ds, I actually think he played pretty well. Methods did too, obviously.
Yeah, you said it well. You know what? Like, you can be great at being a slayer, but we already have a couple of guys that are meant to be doing that. So, some people just have to play that role that isn't glorious but needed.
Yeah. And that's the thing about that's what impressed me so much about Kleenex was like Kleenex plays a very like you watch the guy in the mini app, he never stops moving, right? He's very much going for intel. Like if he gets a pick, great, but if he doesn't, he's sort of at his role is ideally like get traded out and like you know what I mean, go in there, get the intel, and then try to make a play. But man, he like the fact that he was able to put up a 1.35 in hardpoint KD is incredibly impressive. Especially the role that he plays. Like Cammy is very much a slaying role, so the fact that he did his job was great to see. But man, Kleenex, that to put 1.35, I think in his position is incredibly impressive. So that's a great sign of things to come if you're a Toronto Ultra fan, because I mean they were looking good. That team was, and Florida's not a team to laugh at by any stretch of the imagination. This was a team that a lot of people had in their top 5. So big win for Toronto.
Yeah, I know. I will say for me, Awakening was really the only person on the Florida team that was like consistently performing decently or well during that.
Yeah, but that's because they're playing Ultra.
I think Skies had his points too. Like in Control, Skies was popping off, but I think it was mostly those two.
Awakening definitely, I think, was the best one. I actually think, I think you're thinking of Slack who popped off during Control. I don't think it was Sky. I remember Slack made a bunch of different plays versus us in Control. Really hurt us, but yeah, I think Florida's still a really good team. Like I'm like, it is what it is. Like people are going, no one's going to go undefeated. Like you're going to lose games that are against 2 really good teams. So I wouldn't really knock anyone. I did think Awakening probably had like a 2.6 KD for Search and Destroy was something insane like that, right? When like 13-5, incredibly impressive. But I think Florida will be fine. They're still going to struggle against the elite of the elite. Being like your Optics, your Dallas Empires, your Atlanta Phases. But I think every other team outside of that is pretty consistently winnable for them. This was just a really good Ultra team that came in swinging. So.
Exactly. Do you want to go through these maps in a little more detail?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I kind of said what I wanted to say, but yeah, we can bang it out. Again, the first one for me was again just Bance and Methods making the small plays that they weren't putting up the big numbers, but I think they made the small plays that were necessary, and I think Cammy and Kleenex just popped off and came up big.
Yeah, Garrison Hardpoint. I think Kleenex stood out really big there, and I think the one reason why we were able to win that is because he just had consistent map pressure.
So much map
He's
pressure.
putting pressure in every part of the map and just outslaying.
Yeah.
Miami, I really like analyzing Miami because it's slow. You know, amateurs like us, or I'm just kidding. We can really be able to look at the specific plays and outplays that they're doing.
Yeah.
I found that in Miami, Toronto Ultra had a lot of really good, like fakes plays where
Yeah.
they fake going to like A site or B site and then wrap back around, and they had a very consistent way of being able to do that to convince Florida to stack on one side and end up giving up the other point.
Yeah.
One thing that one criticism is I think we're talking a little bit more about methods too. He was a little bit slow to rotate. I also think at some points he was sitting a little too far back.
Yeah. And it's easy to look at the game and be like, oh, methods, went like, I forget, it was like 11-5, right? And it's like, oh, well, look at his KD forehead. Like, he had a 1.57 KD, therefore he was playing well. But like, there was definitely moments where like, I do think that he could rotate a little bit quicker and playing too far back. But I think you hit the nail on the head though, whereas there's definitely positions where he like, it's hard to say if he's like rotating too slowly or like what their set strategies are, because there's definitely moments where like they wanted to set methods up like very clearly across the map, while like 3 of them hit B, so if they do rotate over, methods could play the cross. So it's like kind of tough to say, but yeah, I do agree with your assessment there.
Yeah, exactly. So there were some really good parts there. Were some parts that need to be worked on as well. For Garrison control, I really.
So I was gonna say just for the S&D as well though, because Kleenex actually had a massive 1v1. I just want to talk about how brilliantly he played that. Him and Methods kind of go over there. Methods obviously gets picked up. I think that's fine. They're both watching, you know what I mean, one way. And then once Kleenex gets the info of where he is, he just, again, intelligently runs up, plays the bomb, plays the time, and then is able to kind of get the pick there. And that was like a big 1v1 that had he lost that, potentially could have changed the momentum of that map. But we locked that one in and we were able to take it. But I agree. Good team coordination all around.
Yeah, that's actually a good thought you brought up too, Spencer. Garrison, yeah, that was just a tough one for us. We made some good plays. Like one of the big ones that I thought was Cammy doing a good pinch on round 2 just to like win that out. But for me, control, like I've watched a decent amount of it, but I'm still trying to assess like what is good strategies and what isn't good strategies, right? Because I feel like I have a good grip on that for SND and for your respawn based like domination and hardpoint. But for control, it's a weird mix of strategies related to S&D as well as just your respawn skills.
Yeah, because you're gonna be able to trade your lives with you if you're gonna give up. Like I think Bance specifically hurt us in this one because like I don't want to look too much in like kill death ratio, and you can like go negative and I still think have like a positive overall impact on the game. But going like -13 for lives and control, especially with how close some of those maps were, where again it was like 5 lives to 7 at one point, right? Like you kind of need those extra lives. I think that did hurt us. Cammy played really well for us. But I think that us as a team need to work on that. It also was our weakest point during when we played Minnesota for the Kickoff Classic. So I expect that to be a mode that Ultra continues to sort of work on and improve. And I think we can do it. It just and again it looks again poor against Minnesota and Florida, which again are 2 top 7 teams right now. You could argue both of them were again Florida was number 4 going into the season, right? So nothing too hard to scoff at, but obviously before we look into next week's schedule, it's not like it's getting easier. So yeah, you can just sort of close it out here with your Crossroads on map 4.
Yeah, Crossroads hardpoints. I think just the name of the game is, and it was pretty easy to see, is that we just did a really good job at controlling spawns.
Yeah,
like it's such a spawn heavy map. Well, maybe not because it is pretty small, but at the same time, I forgot that one call it is. But there's one hard point where literally if you have the spawn, you win it.
Yeah, like the spawn right behind the flag. And I think Cammy actually made a couple times where Cammy made some really heads up play where he could have continued to like get the scrap time on the remaining hard point, but he realized that how important the spawns were and how like people were dying, and actually runs over to once again secure those spawns. So I think there was a few times that you're right, Ultra like really understood the importance of like maintaining those spawns and play that accordingly. And I think a map like Crossroads just plays itself right into Kleenex's hands, right, where he's just gonna run around and fry. So that was so much fun to watch. I totally agree. I think that was really good like heads up pressure from again the whole team as like the team as a whole. But Kleenex again really impressed me in that one because he's on maps like that, like he's just gonna run around and take people's heads off. So that was fun to watch.
Yeah, exactly. So Yeah, that's I guess a recap from that series. Great series, loved it. Last thing I wanted to touch on is our most anticipated games for next week.
Yeah, next week.
So Spencer, for you, what's your most anticipated game? What are you looking forward to watching?
So I mean, obviously we'll preview the Toronto ones coming up, but I'm also really looking forward to seeing Minnesota versus NYSL. Now, the reason I bring up Minnesota versus NYSL is because, first of all, I think actually next week there should be a lot of I don't think there should be a lot of close games. Like, I actually think most of them, there's not too many games I'm like really, really excited for personally. But the one that I think actually should be the most evenly matched in terms of teams is Minnesota versus NYSL. And that's because even though NYSL lost 3-0 to the LA Thieves, that was like a really, really close 3-0. Like, I actually think NYSL played really well. And this is, again, a roster that's still really trying to find their footing because of the late retirement from Zuma, obviously, and the injury from him, as well as Hydra not coming over to NA just yet. So they have some pieces that is something they're trying to incorporate. And this is a team that I think can continue to improve as the season goes on. And they showed glimpses of it versus LA Thieves. So it'd be nice to see if they can take that momentum and really continue to improve themselves, because some players in this roster, again, are dirty, especially once Hydra comes in that roster, man. If these guys can get momentum going and get their confidence up and then add Hydra into that mix, it's going to be a really, really interesting team to watch. So it's going to be fun. Hey, can Minnesota, fix their hard point? And are they the real deal? Like, are they a legit top 4, top 5 team in this meta? Are they going to go out there and 3-0 New York? Or is New York going to put up a fight, take a map, take 2, or maybe get the upset and pull it 3-2? I mean, personally, I have a 3-1 Minnesota, but I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued to watch those. How about you?
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree with that thought process. Obviously, I'm going to give you a call out here. My favorite is going to be Ultra Optic.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say Ultra Atlanta FaZe, just because I think Ultra Optic is a little bit more winnable, and therefore going to be, for me, a little bit more interesting to watch. I think with Dallas losing last week, I think I'm now in the position that Atlanta now is the top team. For me, it was pretty teeter-totter between Atlanta and Dallas, but not for Atlanta. So
I always had number one, but I agree.
For me, I'm not even from a bias standpoint. I think this is the most exciting one of the weekend because it is the only instance where you see a true dark horse team play against one of those top 3 teams. And I know we gave them that power ranking. Dark horse teams, those teams that we think can upset these top 3 teams every once in a while.
Yeah, well, if you actually look at last week, the only instance of a dark horse team in our dark horse tier versus a top 3 team was actually Minnesota versus Dallas. Right?
Yes.
That was the only game last week where you saw a dark horse go up against the big 3, and the dark horse actually won. Obviously, again, we had a big 3 go up against a big 3 in Atlanta versus Optic. But the only case that we had, you're right, this is sort of another case of could we have a potential, Minnesota Dallas in our hand where Toronto wins 3-2, right? They got to win both S&Ds, and then they probably lose the control, but can they steal the control? Can they steal a hard point? It's going to be tough. Maybe not likely, but I agree. I'm very excited to see those 2 games. I think it's going to be a good measuring stick on how good are the Ultra, right? Are they the real deal? Right? Can they push these upper tier teams to the brink, or are they going to get 3-0 and not look competitive?
That's exactly what I feel like too. And it's really important to note here, guys, that a loss isn't necessarily a bad thing. Yeah. Like right now, we're not trying to debate whether or not the Toronto Ultra is a top 3 team. They just aren't. It's debating whether or not they're like a 6-5, maybe even a 4 team. Maybe we're talking about maybe 5 here, like 5 or 4 team. Yeah. That's the real debate. And they don't need to win something to still be in that contention. Obviously, if you win one of those 2 games, then it's like, oh shit, maybe they really are in there. Mm-hmm. But if we have something close, if we have a 3-2, 250 hard point to 238, a 5-6 S&D, then I think we're at the point where we can be like, wow, this was very close. They're definitely still in that contention for a fifth place.
Yeah. No, I said going into the year, I think our ceiling was probably 4. I seriously thought that we could, if things went wrong for the LA Thieves, we could maybe, take them as the 4th best team, but maybe 5th, right? I thought that was sort of our ceiling. And after week 1, I think you saw it. So I agree. I think Optic is the more winnable game because you think that their weakness is S&D. So can Ultra take an S&D, and then they have to probably steal a respawn, which again is a much easier said than done. And Atlanta FaZe is going to be tough. If this is a tough week if you're an Ultra, you got 2 big tests. But you're right. If they come away from this weekend with 3 map wins or 2 map two map wins, but some close ones. Like, you're right. Like, I think it's personally a win because, again, I don't think anybody really expected them to be a top 3 team. So losing both of these is fine. You just want to see them be competitive. And you want to know that, like, come stage playoffs, that they're good enough to upset these teams, because anything can happen, right? In Call of Duty, like, just because a team is, like, on paper better and over the course of the season you've seen them perform better does not mean that when push comes to shove in that match, they're going to be the team that wins. Upsets happen all the time. You just want to be a good enough team to, I think, put yourself in that upset conversation. And this is a great opportunity for them to really measure themselves against top tier competition. So I'm excited to see how they perform. I have it 3-1 Optic and 3-0 Atlanta. But hey, I agree with you. I can see the upset. And I'm rooting for it. I'm not betting on it, but I'm rooting for it.
Yeah, don't see me placing bets on that. Well, cool. Hey, I think that's some really great thoughts and analysis. Anything else you want to cover before we head off here?
Yeah, my last part is if they are gonna do it, man, I think you're gonna need to see once again big performances out of their 2 big key pieces in Cammy and Kleenex, and I think Methods is gonna have to keep doing what Methods does. And I think Bance is again going to be another like person to watch. If Bance comes out there like the person we saw dropping 1.72s, but also playing like the person we saw on Map 1 Hardpoint, I think we can do it, man. So I'm excited. Those are sort of the players I'm really watching out. I mean, I mentioned the entire team, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly. Well, hey, you know what, guys? That's it from us. If you like what you hear, please remember to like and subscribe. You know, we're a new channel, 40 subscribers, so really trying to build that pace of, you know, not only like-minded Toronto fans, but also like-minded, you know,
CDL
Call
fans.
of Duty fans.
Yeah, we're
as well.
trying to broaden our content a little bit more general as the season comes out. So let us know, what was your most disappointing team? What was your most impressive team? And maybe we'll do like an updated power rankings or something next week as well. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, as always, guys, thank you for watching and enjoy.